Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm just gonna leave some gameplay of Kurohyou 2 Ashura Chapter playing in the background for about 50 minutes while I talk about why I absolutely hate it, W. Because I'm so disappointed. People were going on about this game for ages. They were saying it was great, it stands up to the earlier Yakuza games, but if I'm being honest with you, after having played it for about 5 hours, I think that at the very least this one, I'm going to assume the other game falls into roughly the same ballpark, but I'm assuming these two games, the only two games I like less in this series is Yakuza Like a Dragon, because there are so many things in Kurohyou 2 that just piss me off. That just genuinely piss me off to no end. That when I was playing it, I was remembering the worst parts of playing Like a Dragon, or the worst parts of playing Judgment. So, for those of you who don't know, this is actually a fan translation, because the two Kurohyou PSP games never actually made it out in the West. The first one got a fan translation from KHH Subs, but they never actually patched it into the game itself because it was surprisingly difficult to do. And then someone put out a partial translation patch that was so incredibly buggy and was missing so much of the game's content that it was not worth playing. And trust me, I tried. So, this team called Team K4L decided to do a fan translation of the second game instead before going back to tackle the first one. Weird choice, but, I mean, it's not too out of the ordinary, I suppose. So, how did they deal with it? Just right off the bat. I mean, as I said, I've only played 5 hours of it, and I haven't even gone past the second chapter, because they actually give you an absolute ton of, like, mini-games and, side quests, sub-stories, I should say, to do. So, it's not like the game is light on content, but the translation is just not great. Now, they have said right away that some things are missing from this translation, like the hostess content, the multiplayer content, because that doesn't work anymore. But there's also a couple of other things missing, like the pachinko help screens and stuff like that. And I can understand, although it feels a bit weird because they've been working on this fan translation for months and they couldn't give it a bit longer to translate all of it at once, but that's not my problem with the translation. My problem with the translation is that it looks like they haven't given it a polishing pass. There's some awkward phrases, there's some strange character moments, there's some like grammatical and spelling errors, and I'm usually pretty anal about this sort of thing, so I noticed them right off the bat. And yeah, there's a lot of them. Like, there's like 4 of them in this video, which is like an hour long. So it doesn't scream of something that they really went over with a fine-tooth comb, you know? Is this meant to be like a beta release to get people to pick up on these sort of things and then fill in the rest of the blanks later? I'd understand that, but they've been hyping up this release a lot, so it feels a bit weird seeing so many just small errors, like nobody's been playing and making note of all of these, but there you go. I am not particularly impressed, and if I'm being perfectly honest with you, the writing hasn't been gelling with me either. And of course, I don't know Japanese, so I can't tell you whether or not it's the game that's doing it, or it's the fan translation that's doing it, but there just isn't much to go on, mainly because, well, they do warn you about this. I'm going to be absolutely fair here. They do warn you that you really should have played the first game before you play this one, because they make so many references. The story is a direct sequel concerning an absolute ton of the original players and their original motivations. There's a ton of side content that relies on you knowing who some other people are, and it's way worse than any of the Yakuza games that I remember. I played through the entire series back to back, and I don't remember it being anywhere near as bad as it was in this game, because it feels like 2 out of 3 people you come across over the course of the story and the side quests are people that you should know from the previous game. Now, I did do myself a favor and go and watch the cutscenes from KHH Sub's YouTube channel, just so I had a little bit of an idea of what was going on. And trust me, you need it. You absolutely need it. There's a reason why. There's plenty of reasons why. Mainly the fact that a lot of these people's characters aren't going to make any sense if you don't understand the first game and its events. Not to mention there's some bloody spoilers, like, really early on, so, you know, be careful about that. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said I was impressed with the writing. I'm not that engaged with it. Although it is kind of helped out by the story having these really nice cutscenes, which are done in a sort of comic style that's very similar to Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. Unfortunately, I didn't get to any of these cutscenes in this footage, but I'm sure they'll be up on YouTube if you really wanted to go see them. And they've got proper voice acting, but one of the things I actually appreciate about this game is that they give you a fast forward button, and you can listen to everything on in a silly pitched voice, while everything goes just that little bit faster. And with how long these games are, I'd appreciate having them in the mainline entries, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. So yeah, let's get on to talking about the gameplay itself. It is a Yakuza game through and through. It's got the brawling, it's got the sub-stories, it's got the main stories filled with crime drama and character development and all that sort of thing. But there is genuinely problems with every single layer of this game that genuinely just drive me insane. It's like they hadn't even played the original games to try and figure out, hey, this is a mistake they made, let's not make that mistake. Although this did come out like around Yakuza 3 or 4, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it came out relatively early in the Yakuza lifespan, so I can kind of understand some of these mistakes. But I can't believe that playtesters went through and said none of these are incredibly frustrating. Like, for example, moving around the Overworld. Now, this is very similar to Yakuza 1 and 2, where all the streets would be pre-rendered and you'd walk on them like it was a point-and-click adventure game. And when you walk from one area to another, the camera angle changes, but therefore your movement controls have to change because it's never the same angle that the camera's on. So you'll be walking in a direction and the camera will change and suddenly you're walking in a completely different way but going the same way. You can hold down the button so that you continue walking in the same direction, but there are very few situations in which you'll actually want to keep walking in the same direction for an extended period of time. And with how frequently the camera angles in this game change, it genuinely drives me nuts. I am genuinely just driven nuts by how often you have to actively change the direction that you're walking in this game. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that the game's got enemies all over the place, and I do not like the combat in this game, so I've been trying to avoid it for as much as I possibly can. The second thing is that there's fat fucks. There's fat fucks walking around every fucking street, and if you run into them, they will knock you over. And sometimes this will lose you money. It's infuriating. It's genuinely infuriating. It is so upsetting. Especially when you get stuck like between a car, a bunch of people behind you, and a fat guy in front of you. So every time you get up and try to walk away, the fat guy will walk into you, knock you over, and cause you to lose more money. I lost 6,000 yen in 30 seconds. And I wanted to throw my fucking Vita out the window. By the way, I'm playing this on a Vita. Because they do not recommend you play this via emulation, because PPSSPP has a bunch of bugs that cause the game to be worse. So I was like, you know what, I'll take you at your word, and I played it on my hacked Slim Vita. Just FYI. That's what it's being recorded off of right now. So, on top of that, you've also got these crimes that you can go solve in the middle of the street. But they give you very little in the way of money and worthwhile experience, so there's no point in doing them, except for completion's sake. Because, holy fuck, they've done a number on the completion in this one. There are so many, like, dull mini-games that you need to spend an absolute ton of time in. You need to fight a ton of people, you need to get rid of a ton of street crimes. There's just so much that it just feels so over the top. Now, I know that getting 100% in these games are usually the directive of a madman, but I just gotta tell you, man, it's kind of fucked even compared to the original series and its games. But yes, There's crimes that are in the street. You will run into sub-stories, and honestly, they're about the same as they've always been, but the writing isn't particularly great, as I mentioned earlier, so I just find it hard to get particularly invested in any of them. And they usually end up in the same way, whether it be a minigame or a boss fight. Well, not even really a boss fight, just a fight half the time, that's all. I'm trying to avoid talking about the combat as much as possible, so let's talk about something else for a bit. The health system. The health system is fucked. I hate it. So the way the health system in this game works is not only do you have a regular health bar, but you have injuries that you need to heal up with completely separate healing items, or go to a doctor who'll heal you up for 5,000 yen, which is a fair amount of money in this game. I hate it, because it means that you have to carry around 2 different kinds of healing items, and it means you're going to have to fill up your inventory with a bunch of bullshit. I don't understand why they felt the need to emphasize this sort of thing. I kind of like the concept where if you attack someone's body part directly, it'll actually do damage to that part, and once you get that part down to a minimum amount of health, they'll start suffering adverse effects. But fights never last long enough for this to matter. Even if you're constantly striking in someone's head or torso or legs, you're just not going to really see an effect unless you're playing one of the boss fights, which goes absolutely forever, and therefore you actually have a time to start racking up some damage. As a result, it feels kind of meaningless. There's also a training system where you can go in a bunch of different combat styles, each of which have their own square and triangle combos, heat moves, and their own like individual ways of playing around with things. So if you're playing with a boxer, for example, it'll make your kicks hurt less, but your punches will be stronger. And there's a couple of other things like that. You've also got leveling up, but all the leveling up does is let you improve your punches, your kicks, your grabs, your health, your stamina, and your heat. Thank you, heat. So it just boring. Most of the combat styles feel a bit similar to each other. There is room to customize them with special skills and the way their combos work and what have you, and pressing a button in a direction will actually change what hit you do. But I'd be lying if I said I found any particular amount of love in it. And they do kind of force you to go down a bunch of different styles, because getting to level 5 in a style unlocks a new style, and there's a couple of side quests which require you to do specific styles, which can kind of drive you nutty if you're forced to use a style that you haven't really been using. And all the enemies have these styles as well. But the thing about it is that the majority of fights give absolutely no XP, so you don't bother doing them. They give you next to no XP, next to no money, and they even have a little thing which is like, let me just explain this. So at the end of a fight, if you've still got heat, but only at the end of street bouts, not crime solving, not sub stories, not main story, at the end of just regular street fights, you can choose if you have heat to get money off a dude or to get more XP off a dude, but you only get like 10%, if that. So like you'll finish a fight that would normally give you 100 yen, but then it'll be like, give me more money and you'll get 112 yen instead. Really small shit like that, which is just entirely irrelevant and a massive pain in the fucking ass. And of course, I also made the mistake of buying a bunch of healing items for the wrong body parts, because your head and your torso is what will take the most damage in this game. You'll fill out those meters 4 times before the arms and legs are even at risk of being filled out once. And it makes the game even more frustrating when you accidentally buy the wrong thing. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Oh god, what else is there to talk about? Minigames, that'll do. Minigames, so you've got a bunch of the regular ones, like you've got the UFO catcher, you've got the batting center, you've got the hostesses, but they're not translated in this patch, but honestly, the writing that they had to do for the one that story required didn't really give me much confidence, especially since they felt the need to put random asterisks after every line that she said, and I don't understand what that was about. It feels like a typo. The worst ones, though, are the part-time jobs. I did 2 of them, one of which you'll see in this video, and both of them were incredibly simple and shallow timing mini-games that were no fun to play at all and went on for way too fucking long. I'm gonna make a guess here. Oh yeah, also, if you want to actually make good money off of them, like more than 9,000 yen, which does not last long in this game, you need to get promoted. But to get promoted, you need to play the minigame like 6 times. So fuck that with a cactus, especially since you've got like 6 or 7 part-time jobs you can go do. And I'm just guessing here, but when you play 2 games that are basically the same timing minigame with slightly different mechanics as to how the timing works, you're going to make the assumption that the rest of the part-time jobs are like that. So don't blame me for that. Blame the game for being not great about it. But yes, yeah, those are really bad. Those are really frustrating. There's a... In the arcades, you get the UFO catcher, but it's all based on 2-dimensional sprites and not 3D and physics, so it's genuinely frustrating trying to find the exact spot you need to get the claw catcher down onto the sprite itself, because it doesn't give you really good physical feedback on it. It just sucks. There's one arcade game you get to play, but it's one of those custom arcade games they make for these sorts of games, and it's a game called Castle of the Dead, which is an incredibly boring light gun-esque shooter. You have to use the D-pad, of course, to move around the screen, take shots at cardboard cutouts, not even real zombies, just cardboard cutouts zombies. And it's dull. It's incredibly dull. It goes for about 8 minutes, and I was bored in 90 seconds. Not to mention that you have to play through that game, I think, 10 times, because the completion requirement is something like 2,000 zombies shot, and I only managed to shoot 200 in a full playthrough of the game where I shot every single zombie. So I don't know what the fuck they're getting at with that, but Jesus Christ. I didn't try the batting cage, I didn't try the mahjong, there's a bunch of gambling, but I mean, if you've played a Yakuza game before, you know what they're going to be like, and you know if you like them or not. I never liked the baseball, I was never particularly good at gambling, so I usually save my money, so those are just completely off limits to me. Even though I haven't actually seen them at this point in the plot anyway, but you'll get to them eventually. There's a couple of others that I haven't heard of before that I haven't gone to, but the rest of them aren't particularly great, so I'm not going to hold out much hope for them. God, what else is there? Alright, I guess we have to talk about the combat now, which is one of the worst parts of this game. You want to know what combat in this game is like? You have... I already talked about the way the styles work, where they change up your square and your triangle combos, and you can add, like, charge square and charge triangle moves that do specific things, and help your battle strategy out a bit. But when you actually get down to the combat, you can dodge out of the way of enemies, but the timing on it is so off that I never managed to make it work consistently. It doesn't work half the time. You've also got a parry, but the parry's even slower than dodging, so even then, that feels just worse. So the combat in this game just feels really unresponsive just in general, and even then, when the enemies knock you over, whether it be like into a wall, or even annoyingly enough, into the fucking crowd, because the crowd, for some reason in this game, if someone gets knocked into them, they'll hold on to them and let the other person get a couple of free shots in. But what's worse is the fact that... the worst thing is the fact that the game makes you mash the X button all the fucking time. So, if you get knocked into a wall, mash the X button. If you get caught in a grab, mash the X button. If you get knocked onto the floor, mash the X button. If you've taken too much damage to the head and the game just decides, oh, it's time to screw him over, mash the X button. So as a result, if you're playing this game and you get knocked into the wall, you'll be mashing away the X button, but then they'll come along and punch you in the gut, and you'll fall onto your knees, mash the X button. Then they'll do a kick, which will send you on the floor, mash the X button even more. And then you'll get back up, but when you're halfway through mashing, they'll start winding up an attack. And if you get up, when this attack is wound up, you'll just get knocked over again, mash the X button. And it is infuriating. It is genuinely so fucking infuriating having to deal with mashing the X button all the fucking time. And it doesn't help that the enemy AI seems pretty fucking psychic. If it blocks 2 moves from you, despite the fact that it was facing the other way and hunched over in half, they can just sometimes turn around and instantly start blocking you, which is infuriating. But If they block 2 moves, the 3rd move will always be parried. You'll be knocked over. Mash the X button. And there are also your charge up moves. But if you hit the square button, well, hit and hold the square button, like one of the attacks you get is one that takes like 10 seconds to go through a predetermined animation. Well, it's not 10 seconds, it's more like 5, but it's genuinely such a long wind-up that it's almost never worth using just because the enemies will never give you that much of a break to actually get the attack charged up unless they're being particularly stupid that day, and it makes the power moves just feel kind of useless sometimes. At least there's some that's kind of useful, like there's the heat charge and kick that doesn't actually drain heat if you miss the attack. So, at least some of them are useful. It's also worth noting that this game's got a stamina system, where if you attack too many times in a row, you'll get out of breath, and you'll just get a free hit on you. And it just makes the game feel even slower, and even less enjoyable, and I kinda hate it. I hate it! I genuinely hate it! I thought I was getting along with it, but the further in I got, I was just having less and less fun. I was avoiding as many conflicts as possible. I was just trying to do everything to stop doing the fucking combat. Oh, and if you're fighting more than one person, the lock-on system is awful, because you can only stay locked onto one person at a time. You can't, like, swap your combo between different people to keep them away from you. And people who you aren't locked on will attack you. And when they attack you, your lock-on will swap to them. But then the person behind you will be like, oh, now it's my turn to attack, so they'll hit you and you'll swap back to them. And you can just be swapped back and forth constantly with no control over it whatsoever. And the battle arenas are so small that it can be really easy to get yourself stuck in a corner. And then mash the X button, mash the X button, mash the X button, mash the X button. It drives me insane. And there are so many things that just don't fucking work. Like, pressing the X button when you've grabbed an enemy to do a heat attack, which is the only way you actually do heat attacks in this game. Sometimes it just refuses to work right. Or when you've got them up against a wall and it just refuses to work right. Or, as I said before, the parries just don't fucking work. I genuinely don't know why. The timing window is just so fucked that I've never been able to get it to work consistently. Like, they give you, like, 100 seconds to do it, and I only managed to get it right at the very last second. It drove me mad. Drove me mad. I think that's everything. I genuinely hate this game. I find so little enjoyment out of it. There's something wrong with it in every essence of it. And it just... I don't want to play it anymore. I will give Yakuza Like a Dragon something. I managed to get my ass through it. This I couldn't even give more than 5 hours. If there are any fan translators out there listening, please, for the love of God, translate Ishin and Kenzan for PS3. Please. I'll help you if you decide to do it. I'll help you test for bugs or shit like that. Just, please, give me the 2 Yakuza games I actually want to play. Dead Souls, we'll get to Dead Souls eventually, when PS3 emulation actually works properly, but... God, I hate this game so much. Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna let you watch the rest of my screwing around in the game for the next 30 minutes, because I genuinely can't be bothered to edit this down. You know what's even more annoying about this one? At least in the original Yakuza games, they had taxis, which let you go from one side of the map to the other in relative ease. In this game, no, just walk all the way there every single time, and it just makes it a slog. And I need you to understand that slog. Especially when the game decides to pull a fuck you and puts you, like, let's just say that you've got the main story that you want to do, and there's a sub-story above it. So you go to the sub-story, which... you do a fight there, then it moves you up to like a little bit higher so that you need to do another thing there. And then at the end of the sub-story, it puts you back on the other side of the map and you get to do another 2-minute walk across the fucking city. This happens more than I would like to admit. I hate it. I genuinely hate it. I don't want to play it again. I'm sorry, Team K4L, you tried, but... no. I hate it. That's all I got. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.
ちょっと待て。はあ？くそ。ちょっと待て。 かかってこいや。
しゃいませ。ありがとうございました。いらっしゃいませ。ええ。
始めるぜ。忙しくなってきたな。忙しくなってきたな。いい調子だ。忙しくなってきたな。忙しくなってきたな。忙しくなってきたな。まずったぜ。まあまあだな。
ありがとうございました。
達也、